The world remembers Nelson Mandela not just as a political leader, but as a symbol of resistance, forgiveness, and hope. His story begins far from the spotlight, in a small village in South Africa, where young Rolihlahla Mandela, later known to the world as Nelson, grew up in the hills of the Eastern Cape. He was born in 1918, during a time when his country was deeply divided, and a system of racial oppression known as apartheid was slowly tightening its grip. At that time, no one could have imagined that this boy would one day rise to change the destiny of his people. But destiny had already chosen him. Mandela's childhood was simple, filled with herding cattle and learning the traditions of his Thembu people. Yet even as a boy, he sensed the invisible walls that separated black South Africans from white. When he was sent to school, a missionary teacher gave him the English name Nelson. This was not unusual. Colonial systems often stripped children of their African names as if to erase their heritage. For Mandela, it was his first taste of what it meant to lose identity under oppression. As he grew, Mandela became more aware of the injustices surrounding him. Black South Africans were forced to carry passbooks, live in restricted areas, and denied access to quality education or healthcare. White supremacy was not just in the law, it was in every corner of life. This was the foundation of apartheid, a system carefully designed to dehumanize and control. For many, the system seemed too powerful to fight. But Mandela was not built to accept silence. In Johannesburg, Mandela was exposed to ideas that would ignite the fire within him. He studied law and met activists, communists, and African nationalists who believed South Africa could be free. It was in this city that Mandela co-founded the first black law firm, offering legal aid to those crushed by apartheid's laws. Every day, he saw broken families, destroyed lives, and dreams crushed simply because of skin color. His mission became clear. He would dedicate his life to justice. Subscribe to Light of History because stories like Mandela's remind us that one man's courage can change the world. Mandela joined the African National Congress, ANC, and in the 1940s, he helped form its Youth League. They believed that petitions and polite requests were no longer enough. The white government was not listening. It was tightening its rule. Mandela and his allies began organizing mass resistance, protests, and strikes. In 1952, Mandela became the face of the Defiance Campaign, where black South Africans openly defied apartheid laws by entering whites-only areas without permits. The risks were high. Many were beaten, arrested, or killed, but Mandela stood in the front lines. The government responded with violence, banning the ANC and arresting leaders. Mandela himself was arrested multiple times, yet with every arrest, his resolve grew stronger. His people saw him not just as a lawyer, but as a leader willing to sacrifice everything for freedom. In 1960, the Sharpeville massacre changed everything. Peaceful protesters were gunned down by police, leaving 69 dead and hundreds injured. The images shocked the world. But inside South Africa, the government doubled down on apartheid. Mandela and the ANC realized that non-violent resistance alone might not be enough. With heavy hearts, they formed Umkhonto we Sizwe, the Spear of the Nation, a militant wing that carried out sabotage against government installations. Mandela knew the risks, but he also knew his people's cries could no longer be ignored. In 1962, Mandela was captured. During his trial, he gave one of the most powerful speeches in history, declaring, "I have cherished the ideal of a democratic and free society in which all persons live together in harmony and with equal opportunities. "It is an ideal for which I am prepared to die." These words echoed around the world. For the apartheid regime, Mandela was a criminal. For the oppressed, he was a hero. He was sentenced to life in prison and sent to Robben Island, a place of harsh winds, hard labor, and endless isolation. For 27 years, Mandela remained behind bars. The prison tried to break him, forcing him into hard labor, denying him proper food, even refusing him the chance to attend his mother's funeral. But Mandela was unbreakable. His dignity remained intact and his mind sharp. Prisoners called him Madiba, his clan name, with deep respect. He educated younger prisoners, kept their spirits alive, and became a symbol of resistance even from behind bars. During these decades, the world outside began to change. International movements grew, demanding Mandela's release. Free Nelson Mandela became a global cry, sung in streets, painted on banners, shouted in protests. Economic sanctions began to pressure South Africa, and slowly, the apartheid regime started to weaken. Subscribe to Light of History for more stories of resilience and hope. By the late 1980s, South Africa was on the brink of collapse. The world's eyes were on them, and the people's voices could not be silenced. In 1990, after 27 long years, Mandela walked free. The world watched on television as he held Winnie Mandela's hand, walking out with his fist raised high, a symbol of triumph and hope. He was 71 years old, but his spirit was young, unbroken, and ready to finish the fight. Mandela immediately began working toward reconciliation. Many expected him to call for revenge, but instead, he called for peace. He knew that true freedom meant unity, not division. Through negotiations with the government, apartheid laws were dismantled, and in 1994, South Africa held its first democratic elections. Millions stood in lines for hours, casting their first votes. And when the results came, Nelson Mandela became South Africa's first black president. The boy who once herded cattle in a small village had now become the leader of a free nation. His presidency was not perfect, but it was a miracle born from struggle. Mandela worked to heal a broken country, promoting forgiveness over vengeance, truth over lies, and hope over despair. He created the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, where victims and perpetrators of apartheid could speak, confess, and heal. Mandela's legacy was not just in ending apartheid, but in showing the world that forgiveness is stronger than hate. He stepped down after one term, proving that power was never his goal. It was freedom for his people. Even after retiring from politics, Mandela continued his work in peace-building, education, and the fight against HIV/AIDS. His smile, his words, and his story inspired millions. Leaders around the world bowed their heads to him, not because of his power, but because of his humanity. When he passed away in 2013, the world mourned. In South Africa, people sang and danced in his honor, celebrating a life that had given them dignity. Around the globe, millions reflected on how one man's fight against injustice had lit a torch for humanity. Subscribe to Light of History, because stories like Mandela's remind us that even in the darkest times, light can be found. Mandela's story is not just history, it is a lesson. It tells us that courage can defeat oppression, that hope can survive even in a prison cell, and that forgiveness can heal even the deepest wounds. Inside Nelson Mandela's fight against apartheid, we find the essence of humanity itself, the belief that freedom is worth any sacrifice, and justice is a dream worth dying for.